Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. How many of you guys had a great weekend? All right, good. So you're ready to put your thinking caps on. My name is Claire, and I come to you from the Sanford Harmony Institute. We are affiliated with National University. How many of you guys have heard of National University? Okay. It's a worldwide university that focuses in a different style of education where you take one class at a time. Our history starts focusing mostly on veterans and their families. But our institute focuses on emotional intelligence, or what we call social emotional learning. And basically, in a nutshell, social emotional learning is learning how to communicate and connect with others. One of my main focus areas are in the K-12 space, where we train educators, principals, teachers, counselors, superintendents to think about how they can interact with students all day long in ways that help those students collaborate and connect with one another in a positive way. So I know that you had some reading, so I just want to kind of test the room and see what you guys gleaned from your reading. Can somebody tell me what is emotional intelligence? Oh no, we're not going to do this. Okay, listen, I understand. I have a master's degree, working on my doctorate actually currently, so I understand the big talking head in the front of the room. That's not my style at all. I am not in charge of your grade, so I really just want this to be a really learning time for you. So please, if you just think you kind of sort of know, somebody else will fill in the answers. So we're going to try just some exercises. Okay, how many of you guys know what color the sky is? Oh, good. Some of y'all know. Some of y'all still don't know that, okay? How many of you guys know the sum of 2 and 2? Oh, you guys, your hands work. That's awesome. All right, how many of you guys know what college campus we're standing on right now? Okay, fabulous. How many of you guys know who the current president of the United States of America is? Yes, it's that easy. You raise your hand. It's nobody shoots you. It's fabulous. So we're going to just be hand raisers today because we're working and learning together. There are no right and wrong answers. And that's the first thing I want you to learn when it comes to social emotional learning or emotional intelligence. There really isn't a right or wrong answer. It's the answer that works in the moment between who and whoever you're communicating with. So the young lady in the back raised her hand first. Your definition of emotional learning.
I thought it was
emotional intelligence. I apologize. Yes.
The understanding of one's emotions, managing those emotions to serve goals, empathizing with others, and effectively managing relationships.
That is a beautiful definition, straight from the textbook. I love it. Can someone please put that in everyday people, words we can text language? Yes.
Your ability to, when you're in a workplace, to effectively communicate with your coworkers or a superior, and to get your point across, as well as to work cooperatively.
That's great. Yeah.
I think you had like your ability to read the room.
Reading the room, I like that. That's a great term. Yes.
The ability to understand yours and other people's emotions.
Go ahead and silence that. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, connecting with others. Now, here's the crazy thing, and this is one of the hardest parts. I'm going to tell you, the hardest, challenging, most difficult part of any. Oh, I should stay here because of the breadth of the camera.
Yes.
How far can I go when I come on? Am I
Keep
off?
going
Am I off?
and stop.
Okay, so right here. All right, so the hardest, most challenging part of this actually starts with the introspective look at who you are. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am an only child to a firefighter of LA County and a psychologist. Somebody tell me, what do you think, just knowing those few things about me? Tell me something you guess might be true about me. Yes.
You might be a little bit more prone to be able to, at long swaths of time, you take that to yourself and you'll be able to handle yourself pretty well.
Okay, great. So you pulled that from me being an only child. I didn't have a lot of people to play with because I was by myself. What else can you guess from me? Only child, dad's a firefighter, mom's a psychologist.
All right. Well,
based on that, I'm guessing that you are a hard-working, studying person who wants to follow their career, do studies a lot of nights and days to pass, to do good, to get your degree, and to where you are today. That's how the person you are. Even if you're an only child, that's what you will be, and that's what you study for your future.
Okay, great. Those are some great assumptions. Anybody else? Some other assumptions. It's easy. No right or wrong answer. Easy.
You're overachiever.
I'm an overachiever. Now, did you gain that from my parents or because I said I was working on my doctorate?
No, it's, I mean, you put two high caliber, careers you put together, and
Right, exactly. Well, I will say I did not have an option to get a B in my home for certain. Yes.
Maybe a high degree of public service is like expected of
That's a
you.
great assumption, right? So my parents are both kind of in service industry, so we talk a lot about that. So here's a question. So knowing just a little bit you know about me, if someone to say yes, ma'am to me, is that offensive because I'm an old lady, or is that respectful? Just guess.
Respectful.
Which one do you think? Shout it out. What do you think? If I'm the store and somebody says, yes, ma'am,
Respectful.
is that respectful? Is it respectful or disrespectful to me? Respectful. You actually would be right. I grew up, my dad, actually, I didn't say more of his history while he retired as a firefighter. He actually was a Vietnam veteran. So in our home, ma'am, sir was the option. I never got to call an adult by their first name. They were Mr. or Mrs. or auntie or uncle or sister or brother or ma'am or sir. That was it in my house. So when a clerk comes up to me and says, yes, ma'am, or may I help you, ma'am, it just kind of rolls off my back. Whereas some other people in my age demographic feel a little frustrated by that. Like, hey, I'm nobody's ma'am. I'm still cute. I'm still hip. I'm still young, right? That interaction with that person, not a big deal because I paid for my pack of gum and I walk away. Easy as pie. But if that person were to work with me and consistently called me ma'am, how would someone know whether ma'am was respectful or disconcerting? How would that person speaking with me know that maybe ma'am was working or maybe it wasn't working? Yes, you haven't said anything.
Depends on like based on the relationship you have with them, if they're coworkers and same level as you and what position they are in.
Okay, so some of that might be whether or not we are at the same level in the organization. What else? What else might be a telltale sign that same ma'am just isn't vibing?
said, even if they don't especially say anything like your body language, as you said, reaction.
Yeah, so does my face frown up every time you say ma'am, or do I clutch my pearls and look at you like, or do I just continue the communication? So this is the hardest part about emotional intelligence. One, there really are no right or wrong answers. It's about how we interact. So what's your name, sir?
Matt.
Matt. So if Matt and I are on a team together, a lot of how Matt grew up, how he interacted, is going to affect the way we interact, right? If Matt grew up in a family where raising your voice and yelling and, hey, dude, how's it going, was just how we interacted, then me coming up behind him and interacting in that way, not a big deal. Friendly, kind, caring, he might yell and scream something back. If Matt grew up with 6 brothers and everybody teased each other, like, oh man, that hat's a little crooked. Really? That's how you put it on? If that's how he grew up, it's not a big deal. But if he grew up in a really quiet, reserved family, me raising my voice in excitement might very well feel disrespectful to him, right? Me teasing him might make him very self-conscious. And so the biggest challenge about emotional intelligence starts with us understanding who we are and why we are who we are. Did you grow up with some type of religious tradition? Did you grow up in a family where saving every penny was essential? Did you grow up in a family where it doesn't matter what you call people, where you come, we just go by our instincts? All of those things, not right, not wrong, just the family you came from but it certainly does inform how you hear, how you see, how you interpret others' interactions with you. Are you guys tracking? At least nod your head. Nod your head. Does that make sense? Yes? Right? Is that a little bit of a different understanding of how emotional intelligence? Now, here's what's going to be crazy about the rest of this time. The rest of this time, we're going to work in teams. So I just want you to turn to the person to your right. All right, and that's going to be your buddy. If you need a truddy, that's fine. If there's a trio. Oh, look. All right. There you go. Everybody have a buddy or a truddy. Actually, you might come in back here. All right, you guys can work together because I don't think we want to work with the teacher. All right. Okay. All right.
Still scary.
So this is why relationships are so important. And in the workplace, I'm not talking about like romantic relationships, right? I'm sure later on you're going to talk about how that's not really a smart thing in the workplace. That's not what I'm here to talk about. But every person you interact with, from the janitor to the secretary to your compatriots to your supervisor to the CEO, you will have some type of relationship, some type of interaction. Am I out of scope here? Where am I?
Oh, no, you're good.
I'm good, okay. And how you interact with that person will inform you. If the CEO of your organization comes down and says, oh wait, you're Fred, right? Oh man. What does that make you feel in that moment? Like, oh, how does he know my name? And why is he shaking his head when he walks away? Like, should I go talk to my boss about my job? Like, right? Or if that CEO says, you're Fred, right? Yeah, man, we're so glad to have you. Thanks for being on board. Right? That's a really different interaction. Right? But depending on, what's your name? Caesar, he's not Fred. Depending on Caesar's background, he might very well read those interactions differently. And how he responds to those interactions might very well be different. So we're gonna try just a little something. We're just gonna be a little vulnerable, okay? Everybody ready to kind of step outside the box and try a little something? Okay, yes? Yes! Oh my goodness. Okay, it's like, did you guys all have lunch and you're like in a food coma? Is that what it is? Food coma, that's the situation? All right, so with your buddy, we're just gonna start sharing, just learning about each other. What accomplishment has made you proud? And what did you do to celebrate? I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. Go. You pick. Are you serious? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, I need a brave soul to share their buddy's accomplishment and how they celebrated. Hopefully somebody who hasn't already shared. Again, this is not going to get your hands smacked. Just share. All right, go ahead.
My partner was in the military, and we said when we got home from deployment, he went out out with his family and celebrated with dinner.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for your service. So what does that tell us about this gentleman? What's your name? Joshua. So he has a long tour of duty. He serves his country well. He comes home, and the way he celebrates is to go eat with his family. What does that tell us about him?
He's family oriented.
Okay, he's family oriented. His family's really important to him, right? He could have gone and just gone binge drinking, right? Some of us might have chosen to do that, right? But that's not what he chose to do. What else? What else do we know? What else can we assume? Yeah.
He always cares about his loved ones, so he would like spend time with them after many years out during service. So it would always be like, time to hang with your loved ones, your closest friends, and that's what makes it special.
Yeah, right? So we know that he's definitely family oriented, right? That's something, a really important part of his life. What else?
He likes to eat.
He's probably looking for a killer meal after being deployed.
Totally, right? And she said too, food. Food might be a very important component in his family life. Now here's the interesting thing that the books won't really tell you. Ready for a trick? In order to become really good at interacting with your coworkers and utilizing emotional intelligence, you have to listen. And not in that high stakes meeting, not in that discussion about your promotion. It's in that water cooler talk, that conversation about the weekend, that you should be making some mental notes about your coworkers, about your boss, about their values, so that you kind of know what is important to them. So I can imagine if he and I are in a high stakes, discussion, me yelling out your mama is not going to help me connect with him, right? It might actually do the exact opposite of what I wanted. But if he and I are having a conversation where we just cannot see eye to eye, finding a way to frame our challenge in a familial setting. If I create a metaphor that's like a family, it might very well communicate to him better than me making a metaphor about maybe football, or about a tree growing, or about building a sandcastle, right? So as much as it is important for us to know who we are, what our values are, what's important to us, it is equally important for us to really take those opportunities to listen. Now, most of us, unfortunately, in our current society, only listen in order to respond. And that's a really missed opportunity. Oftentimes, in settings like these, we reinforce from kindergarten to graduate school that person that is willing to just say what they think, no matter what. Just raise your hand, say it. And that's helpful in a communication between a talking head like me and a class like you. But when we get to one-on-one interactions or group dynamics, listening for understanding, listening to make connections is a very valuable skill. Being able to remember, February is his mom's birthday, and if I'm his supervisor and he's asking for a day off, for me to say, hey, Joshua, are you taking time off to go hang out with your mom? Man, yeah, take that time. That's not the time for me to press the importance of the company. If you really cared about this company, you would give me those 2 extra hours I needed. You know why? Because if he has to choose between this company and his mama, guess who's missing out, right? But we aren't necessarily taught to think in those dynamics, to think about why is someone asking for that time off. How many of you guys have ever been in charge of creating a shift? Your shift lead at a fast food restaurant, or Target, or wherever. right? Oftentimes we are trained just to plug in numbers and don't value anyone's time whatsoever because it just is a heartache. Because then everyone's going to tell you their sad story. So I remember my very first job. It was at a very, prestigious fast food restaurant, McDonald's. Don't knock it. And I got promoted to shift lead mostly because I came on time and stayed late. I mean, it really wasn't that hard to reach that bar. And that was the training. Literally sat down and watched a video about how to create a schedule and do not worry about anyone's accommodations unless they had to go to school. You had to deal with school because that was part of the law. Most of us were, college students, or some of us were high school students. But other than that, outside of that contractual obligation to make sure that student was able to get to school, you didn't listen to anything. And I would report to you, that's the opposite way to build a team. Because we had tons of turnover and a lot of turnover around those important holiday times. Around graduations, there were tons of arguments about, well, if I can get this time off, then I just quit today. Which meant tomorrow, we couldn't hire somebody tomorrow. We were understaffed and made it more stressful for the rest of the team. Now, unfortunately, my 17-year-old self did not have that skill set to understand all of those things. And I just said, oh, well, they were losers or whatever. I decided to just check off a box in my head. But now that I'm older and wiser, I know better. That those people didn't have to be forced out of employment. Understanding those values and hierarchies, I could have had a different kind of conversation. And had I listened to my coworkers while we were slaving over shaking some salt over fries, I might have thought and made those connections, might have well built a stronger team. And I just have to say, I was probably a pretty crappy shift leader. I'll just be honest. Because I didn't think of those things at all. I didn't connect with those things. And no one told me that those items were important, that being a leader was more about listening than telling. Guiding a group of people was more about understanding their intrinsic motivation than getting to our bottom line and our goal of how many, seconds it took us to get an order out. And so as you guys are continuing toward your business degrees, as you're, pursue other careers or different degrees, I want you to really think about how you can utilize your listening skills to bolster your position. And I'll just say this, as American society, most of the time we paint a boss as this visionary person that knows how to put the screws on the people under them. And I'm going to tell you, most people that are bosses like that don't have very strong or effective teams. If you can think back to the best teacher or mentor you have, if you can think about that boss that you would be willing to get up in the middle of the night, most likely it was because they cared about you and they made you feel important. They helped you understand your place in this larger picture and valued that place, whether it was a janitor or a CEO or architect or anything. Each and every one of us in an organization have our place. But it's awfully hard to run a Fortune 500 company if nobody's willing to clean the toilets. And so unfortunately, we gain a lot of, anecdotes about that amazing boss. And so we go into school thinking, yeah, I'm gonna be that boss. I'm gonna be that person in the corner office that's making all the decisions. I'm gonna be the one. For me, it was like the one with the high heels and the cute outfit and the suit and all the everything. That's kind of what was in my mind. The accoutrement of success. But a really successful leader, which I'm imagining you guys are all thinking about working toward, is that one that masters emotional intelligence in a way that they understand how to motivate. And that really truly starts with listening. We're gonna have another exercise. Everybody take out a piece of paper for me, please. It doesn't matter, lines, no lines. Are there any questions so far? No burning giant questions. You guys are so quiet. I have you guys doing dance in a second or something. Everybody have a piece of paper? Good. All right, great. talk to your friends. I want you to just look at your paper, have a writing implement in hand. Ready? I'm gonna give you 15 seconds to do this next assignment. And I'll just look at your paper, I'll read it for you, okay? Draw a picture of a trunk. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5. 1, pins down. All right. All right. I'm gonna give everybody's gonna, when I say go, you're gonna stand up and you're gonna find someone that has a similar picture to you. Go.
That's good.
We need to find more pictures.
Elephant trap?
I can have your attention, please. All right, so now raise your hand if you found somebody. Did somebody not find somebody with a hand next to them? Okay, so if you would like to share your picture, maybe like 4 of you guys, come on, be brave. Come share your picture. All right, come on up.
Pretty proud of it.
Are you proud? I love it.
Show and tell. I suck at drawing, so I didn't.
That's all right.
I'm in a pirate trunk.
Oh, pirate trunk. Tell me why.
I thought of.
Do you like pirate movies?
Yeah, sure, I like those.
All right. Oh, Pirates of the
I thought it was
Caribbean.
funny, and I made a joke, and I was got the video, so.
Oh, movie. Hey, we're thinking about something else. Okay, I love it. High five.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Someone else. Come on, quick. All right, come on.
Okay. When you said trunk, I just drew the back of the trunk, like a trunk.
Now, why'd you do that?
Because when you think of a trunk, I remember back at my workplace that we always used a trunk, and I always had a trunk. So I drew a trunk that had a trunk, because that's what we use in our workplace. That's what we use to load up our, like, supplies and everything. That's what we use. So
Okay, great. High five. All right, you raise your hand. Come on up. And
Oh, yeah.
all right, what did you draw?
It's a tree trunk.
Oh, a tree trunk. What? And why did you draw that?
It's the first one that came to mind.
Okay.
Right after that, I was like, oh wait, there's a car trunk. But I was writing a tattoo. So I was like, you know.
So you're already committed.
I already committed to it. Let's just go for it.
Okay, great. I love it. High five. Anybody else draw anything? Yes.
I confused myself a little bit when I thought trunk. I don't know why I thought stump.
Okay. All right. Oh, look at that over here.
That's an elephant.
Oh, that's an elephant. I thought it was a rock.
Yeah. It was really quick. It looked good.
Yeah, I know. 50 seconds. Why would you draw an elephant trunk? Why?
Just because when I was making this, I was like trunk, and I was like, oh, elephant trunk. And I was like, nose.
All right.
That's why I missed it back.
3 seconds. 3 seconds trunk. I like it. High five. All right, great. Anybody draw anything else? Anything different? So when we say the word trunk, there are all kinds of things that we can think of, right? No one drew, trunks like, swim trunks. But do you think there's a real reason? What is the motivating factor to why you obviously only have 15 seconds? So you have to think. Yes.
It's whatever you associate with that word the most.
Right, and tell me, which one of these is right?
Not a-
All
They're all right and they're all wrong. It's the exact same with emotional intelligence. When we respond to someone's answer, someone's question, we just respond. It's whatever, maybe because we have an association with work or a family or a TV show. But the importance is to understand what's behind that response. I'm offended, I'm upset, I'm hurt, I'm frustrated, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm overjoyed. Why? And is there maybe a reason this other person responded in that way? So just like I said a word and you wrote whatever it is you wrote, our responses are similar. They're not right. They're not wrong. We grew up the way we grew up. We gained the values that we gained from our family, but it's really, really important for us to dig underneath that, because unfortunately, there are some ways in which that our assumptions might be wrong, right? I grew up, again, in a family focused on service. So for me, every single firefighter was an uncle. If I saw a fire truck, I waved as a kid because they were all nice guys. There were all kind men and women that served us that, you know, bought my Girl Scout cookies when I was little and, you know, gave me, you know, rides and let me, you know, slide down the pole. There was nothing about that. And for the most part, policemen for me were my dad's coworkers. They were nice and kind, and they gave me candy and equally bought Girl Scout cookies. But as I became older, I realized that, you know, that assumption isn't everyone's assumption. Everyone doesn't have the option to see behind the scenes, you know, police officers hanging out in a fire station getting their paperwork done. Everyone doesn't have that opportunity to see them with their families and hang out. And unfortunately, not all people that are supposed to serve our community serve them well. Now, if I hold on vehemently to my growing up as all policemen are nice to firemen and they all always buy Girl Scout cookies and they're always nice, and I have a friend that has a different opinion and they share that opinion, is it possible for me to possibly step out of my perspective and step into their perspective and see how, gosh, they weren't afforded the same perspective that I was? Do I have to hold on to my experience as truth? It certainly is my truth. It certainly is my experience, but does it take away any value from my friends? And is it possible for me to listen and hear and say, you know what, that experience should not have happened. And that's not okay. And still hold on to my own personal happy experiences with that group of people. Yes.
No, I was just gonna say that goes to have empathy in this situation and understand that you can have your own perspective, but maybe they've had a really bad situation with a cop or a fireman to give them their perspective. You don't have to change yours, but you can still be empathetic with their situation.
I love that word, empathy. Did everybody hear that? Did everybody say empathy? Does anybody know what that means? That's a pretty fancy word. We use it, empathy, sympathy, we use those words. What does it mean? Yeah.
Understanding people's emotions and how they're feeling.
Right? Yeah.
Empathy is like to place yourself in their shoes and to really see into their eyes. And sympathy is more like to feel the connection, but not to really understand.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. So yeah, so empathy really truly is, as much as possible, stepping in the place of whoever I'm listening and trying as best I can to see the world, the perspective, the problem, the challenge in their perspective, completely and totally without judgment, so that I can understand. Now, can you imagine how helpful that might be in an argument? Can you imagine how helpful that might be in the boardroom? Can you imagine how helpful that would be in negotiating any type of deal, stock deal, real estate deal? So oftentimes when we talk about these things, people think like, oh gosh, it's airy, fairy, fluffy, puffy stuff. Like, that's not hard-nosed business. But the truth is, those people who are truly successful, those excellent salespeople, those amazing CEOs that are able to get a board, those entrepreneurs that are able to get venture capitalists to invest millions of dollars in their ideas, they are masters at this. They are masters at the ability to know their audience, to speak to the room in a way that resonates, that touches that person to their core. So they have no choice but to say yes and open up the checkbook, to say yes to the deal and shake that hand. So that this opportunity is the opportunity that they have been waiting for. So as much as I think utilizing emotional intelligence and gaining social emotional skills are just important for being great human beings. Gosh, if you want to succeed in business, you got to understand people. You have to understand your customer. You have to understand your investor. And in high stakes business, your career and your salary will depend on it. That, investor that makes a wrong investment that doesn't go well because they didn't realize their target customer's real underlying goal, they don't really get a second chance to lose millions of dollars. And so understanding that focus group or that target audience is really, really important. Any questions? All right, grab another sheet of paper. You can use that same sheet of paper if you want. I love your environmental consciousness, but please go ahead and tear it out if it's connected to something. All right, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, and you're going to find a buddy that you have not had before. Ready, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 4. Does everybody have a buddy? All right. Excellent. All right. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you each to raise your left hand. Raise your left hand. For this assignment, you may only use your left hand. You and your buddy will build and fly a paper airplane. One per group. You must work together. One per group.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Really, really good.
Alan, are you by yourself?
Yeah.
Is there a third?
Oh, because another student.
Yeah. Okay.
2 hands.
All right, 10 more seconds.
We're ready to go.
All right, guys, finish up. Once you are finished with your paper airplane, I want one buddy to take your airplane and come up front. Represent your buddy, right up
Okay, now we can go.
Let's get this right.
All right, scoot down a little bit, guys. We can get everybody up there. There you go. There we go. All right, so one at a time with your left hand, we're going to see who built the best airplane. And you're going to fly it starting here. Yes. Yep. With your left hand. Yeah. Woo! Oh!
Sorry. Yeah, ours was solid. We didn't do too bad.
All right, so you guys tell me about this exercise. How many of you guys thought it was kind of weird?
It was too easy.
Okay, here's the question. How many of you guys are left-handed in the room? Oh, so our left-handed folks, 1, 2, 3, 4 of you had a little bit of an advantage to our right-handed counterparts, right? So tell me, what did you think? How many of you and your buddies had a challenge maybe deciding what kind of paper airplane to build? Right? Did anybody have a little conversation about, right? Somebody is trying to figure out, remember how to build one? Right? You had to communicate, right? You guys have to talk to each other. You didn't just, grunt it on through, right? How many of you guys had different opinions about where to fold or how to fold? Yeah? Some of you guys were a little bit lost.
Yeah. We got
Speak up louder, please. Right? Well, maybe some of us didn't have that skill. We didn't build a paper airplane as a kid, or it's been like forever since we built a paper airplane. What are some other observations you guys had about this exercise?
It's not just about teamwork, but it's about what's our strengths and weaknesses so that we can overcome it in later like projects or in later teamwork or later presentations. Like, what are we good at?
Right? Did you guys take kind of a quick inventory? Like, hey, do you know how to build a paper airplane? Because I don't know how to build a paper airplane. Right? Some of you guys have those experiences. Anybody get in just an argument where you guys cannot figure it out and you're like, forget it, you build it. I'm not. Nobody? Okay, well, that's good. Well, this exercise is just to help you think about how you solve problems and what words you use to fix that. Imagine if you and your buddy spoke different languages. Imagine if you and your buddy had completely different ideas of what a paper airplane were. Some of you guys had that. right? Like some of this is obviously fun and there's no real, failure, right? You just get up and make an airplane, and if it dove down, it was just kind of fun. But there are often times when we are in situations where we have a problem to solve, a challenge to overcome, a project to complete, and we have to kind of start with a baseline of what we're doing. And oftentimes we choose to say, I know exactly what we should do. So everybody should just do what I want to do. How successful are those plans? Not super successful. Oftentimes we have to think about our strengths. Now, those of us that had a friend that was already left-handed, we had a pretty, easy time of it, because one person probably was pretty dexterous, right, and able to really help us along. And so how many of you guys, raise your hand if your buddy was left-handed? So did you find that they did more of the folding and creasing?
Yeah.
A couple of you guys yes, and a couple of you guys no. So some of you guys said, hey, this is your wheelhouse, like have fun with the folding, because my left hand doesn't know what it's doing. I can't make it work, right? So but can you guys think about some ways in which the skills that you utilize in this very silly exercise could maybe, I hear next class you guys have a group project coming. Everybody remember it's coming? Yep. That maybe some of the skills that you utilize here could maybe help. Like first, inventorying everyone's strengths and weaknesses. Like, I love to write. Oh, great, you are going to be the writer. Right? Or, oh, I love doing research. Or, gosh, I'm good at summarizing or synthesizing. Or, I'm excellent at drawing. Or, I am killer, PowerPoint person or whatever, right? It might be a good benefit to just kind of think about what your strengths and weaknesses are before you begin. It also might be good to clarify what everyone believes the end goal of the project should look like, right? Like if one of you guys think that the paper airplane should go vertically and the other one thinks that the paper airplane should go horizontally, you guys would have some pretty challenging times folding your paper airplane. But I think oftentimes we don't stop and think about other people's perspectives. So this is a great opportunity coming up for you guys to utilize the empathy we talked about, to think and listen about what your other group members see when they think about the end goal of the project, right? In this case, it's a paper airplane. It's pretty innocuous. But we're talking about a little bit higher stakes coming up soon because you're talking about your grade. And so one person might have one idea and another person might have another idea, and you guys both do your best, but they never meet. And so that's also part of, being aware, self-aware, but also being aware of those around you when entering an opportunity to work and collaborate with someone is first defining what it is. Any questions so far? Any comments? All right. So one of the main reasons why we want to master emotional intelligence and social emotional learning is because we all are on a path to impact our community. Now, our community can certainly be where we live. It can be, where we worship, where we hang out. But our community is also where we work, where we go to school, and who we interact with. And so I want to give you guys a little bit, of a framework to think about as you move forward. So first we started with your identity, right? Who you are, your experiences, how you grew up. All of those things kind of help filter how you see and hear and listen and interact, right? But you also have to think about what your desired impact is. And that's going to change, right? In this class, your desire is maybe to get an A or a B, or maybe it's just to pass a class. I don't know. But, maybe in a work setting, your desire is to impress your boss so that you can, get the next raise or the next promotion. Or, if you're in your community, in the place you serve, maybe you just want to do a good job. Maybe you just want to really care about the impact that you make in the community, whether it's, caring for, dogs that don't have homes, or caring for, kids in foster care or anything in between, right? They're all these different places. And where we come from and what our impact, our goal is, that's really where our opportunity is, right? Where those two things meet. Who we are, what we're good at, what we like, and then what we want to do, what we want to get accomplished. All of those things make up who we are. We talked about this a little bit before, but this is just kind of, I really like this image because at our core, we are who we are, but how we present to the world has everything to do with all those other things that come along with us. Our ethnicity and our race, maybe our sexual orientation, maybe our class, maybe whether we're, male or female, our culture, all of those things, that context that we have talked just a little bit about. I want you each to, if you have another piece of paper, I want you to just think about this image for a moment. It doesn't have to be as complicated as this, but I want you to begin, I want you to begin thinking about who you are, right? So just take a few minutes. You can, if the circle doesn't work for you, it does not have to be a circle by any means. But I just want you to think about those things that make you up. What is at your core? Obviously, your race, ethnicity, that might be a little easier. Sexual orientation might be a little easier. Your culture, your class, your family background. I want you just to take a few moments to really think about those things, your own values. I'm going to give you a few minutes. Give me just 1 minute. So I want you to think about all those things that you wrote down. I hope you really took some time to really think about all those things that make up you. And I hope even after this class that you'll take a little bit more time to really delve into thinking about what informs how you see the world and how you interact with the world, right? Here's a silly story I'll tell you just as an example. So I am an African-American woman. I grew up in a pretty religious family, and so Sundays were family days, very important. We would all go to church. We spent quite a long time in church. I come from a Southern Baptist tradition, so that meant we spent a long time in church. And then after church, we would go to my granny's house, and my granny would cook, and she, oh, let me tell you, whew, just makes me happy thinking about it. And she would make these amazing feasts, and we would all come, and it was a makeshift table. She had a normal dining room table, but on Sundays we bring in a couple of card tables to add to the dining room table, and then this beautiful piece of fabric that she kind of, I don't know where she found it, she sewed it herself, and we would all just sit around the table and like dig in like nobody's business, right? And we would just sit there and talk and laugh and talk about the week, and all of those things are great. Well, I went to college, and I met this really cute guy. His name is Frank, and I like him a lot. I actually married him. And we've been married now for 19 years. Don't do the math. I got memorized too. And so I thought, I'm going to keep this same tradition. Unfortunately, we were far away from my family at this time, up in Northern California. And so I thought, I am going to make this man a meal, and we're just going to have our own romantic, wonderful Sunday after church meal. So I did all the cooking and the basting and all that, and put the oven in just the way my granny taught me, so it would just be low, but it would cook all the way while we were in service. And we came back into the house. The house smelled amazing. He went and changed out of his church clothes. I set a table. We had just this little cute little cardboard table because we were broke, both graduate students. And so I sat it down, I put a little candle, and he took a little long time getting dressed. He finally comes out, and he makes his plate. He picks it up, and he goes into the other room and turns on television. I immediately burst into tears. Like all of my romantic thoughts, we were supposed to have a beautiful family. Why doesn't he love me? And I spent all this time on the food, and he absolutely hates it. I don't know how I'm going to do any more time. I mean, we literally were married less than a year. And I think I could spend the rest of my life with this insensitive idiot. Like, how is this even going to happen? Like, I'm like in tears. I say nothing to him. I go into my room. I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, send me a plane ticket. I can't be here anymore. I absolutely hate her. I don't know why I married her. And my mom's like, did you actually have a conversation? No, I didn't have a conversation. My mom's like, please, for the love of God, child, just go talk to the man, right? So I'm okay. I wipe my face, not makeup everywhere, not a cute look for sure. I get up and I go to the bathroom. He says, hon, this is really good. Thanks so much. And then he goes back. And I turn back to the bedroom. I call my mom. I was going to talk to him. He didn't want to talk. My mom's like, Claire, you have to talk. You have to talk to the man. He has no idea what is going on. So, okay. So I go and I say, Frank, my feelings are really hurt. I made this food. He's like, I know, it's great. It's awesome. Like, why are you feeling hurt? I have like 3 plates. It's amazing. But we were supposed to have Sunday dinner. He's like, we're having Sunday dinner. This is the best Sunday dinner I've ever had in my life. I love this. I can't believe I get to marry you. I'm so excited. And I'm like, but we were supposed to sit at the table and talk. What? You never told me we were supposed to sit at the table and talk. Like, I'm eating the food. It's good food. We're watching the game. Like, this is great. I never once, in talking about our family dinners, talked about my expectation about what it would be. And he's a very sweet man, had no intent at all of hurting my food. He's thinking the food is good. The higher the pile of the plate, the more he's communicating to me that he appreciates me because his food is good and he's eating all of it. But in that moment, like, we totally missed each other. 2 people still madly in love, first year marriage, all happiness. I had this whole expectation about what this meal was supposed to be, and he had a completely different expectation about what that meal would be. Now tell me, who was wrong? Okay, raise your hand if you think I was wrong. Don't raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think he was wrong. Guess what? None of us was wrong. We just had different ideas of what this should be. And so much of that had to do in his family, like the TV was king. They ate around the TV, and that was family time. And even to this day, my husband feels so loved if I build him a mound of food and leave him be in front of the game. Oh, that's love to him. And that's not right or wrong, that just is. That's how he perceives love. And for me, if we have the most wonderful conversation and talk about our feelings and our emotions and our plans, oh, it's just so romantic and it sends me a fluttering. Guess what? 20 years later, that hasn't changed. But our success in our marriage has been about understanding the other. If I spent those 20 years fighting with him about what was valuable, was sitting down at the table and talking. And until you gain real value in that, you know what? You don't really love me. And if he spent the last 20 years like, woman, I just need my space. Just give me some food and let me watch a game. Like, that's love. Love me, woman, please. Like, we would have never, I guarantee you, made it these years without, praise the Lord, the wisdom of my mother saying, talk to the man, please. Communicate your expectations and what it means and why it's important. And if I hadn't taken that time explaining my history of all of these years of what Sunday dinner meant to me and how important it was, right? So guess what? So we watch the game and then we have Sunday dinner now. Because it's really important for him to watch the game. That's how he, downloads, and he just wants to do that. So I make some appetizers, we watch the game, and then after that, guess what? We have a meal and we sit and talk. Was that so hard? No, but guess what? We could end up divorced over that quite easily. Over something so goofy and silly. But honestly, that's kind of the crux of most of our conflicts, is that I see one thing because of who I am and where I come from and what I experience. X equals this. And you see that exact same thing, but it equals something completely different. And because we don't stop to think about, wait a minute, where did my idea of what quality time means come from? And then we don't actually share that, and it makes it almost impossible for us to have a meeting of the minds. And that's why I say this is like the hardest part of emotional intelligence and social emotional learning, is really understanding yourself and being willing to share that with others. So I have a little bit of a framework to think about how you tackle a problem, right? We're not going to have time to go into your history, but I guess I got about 10 more minutes, and I just want to talk about the different ways people perceive problems and how they attack it. And maybe you will find yourself in one of these three kind of vignettes, and maybe you'll see your partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your best friend, your cousin, your roommate, and it might just give you a little bit more insight in how they move forward. Now this, for the purpose of a business class, is more focused on how people work, to help you kind of think about how you interact with your counterparts. So we've got three different people here. And one is a refiner. A refiner is a person who has seen something done well, and they want to do it that same way, right? The path has already been set for them. They know it. They want to keep it that way. They're experienced, and they're kind of hesitant to change or do anything new because they've already seen it done well. It's already done properly. So why fix it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? That's kind of our refiners. Anybody see themselves maybe a little bit in this? Not right, not wrong, just a perspective, right? My perspective about police officers when I was young would be this way. They're nice, kind people. Why would you ever defame them. They're family oriented. They want to serve. Like, if I'm not able to kind of use my empathy to put in someone else's shoes, I can become very hardened to that position and really not be able to see someone else's perspective. And that would be a real shame not to be able to see someone else's perspective. Because if I truly care about the perspective of that profession, understanding how they're seen poorly would be more helpful to that profession to think, hey guys, let's think about this communication with, you know, my uncles, right? All right. Then there are the drivers, those who have seen it done poorly, right? These are people who are able to see things that like just don't work, systems that are broken, and they have experienced a poor model and they're driven to succeed despite that obstacle, and they desire to create a better plan. They're really highly motivated, typically open to feedback, and they are always wanting to create a new model, right? This was good, but I can see how it could be so much better. We just scrap this plan and do something else, or if we just do it right, be even better. Anybody see themselves in this perspective? Not a right perspective, not a wrong perspective, but can you see how maybe the driver and the refiner getting together might really find themselves in some serious conflict? Neither one of them are right or wrong, but the way they are seeing things make them at opposing viewpoints. And that power of empathy can really help them communicate to solve that problem together, okay? And then lastly, the innovators. They are people who just kind of don't like what they see at all, or they see something different. Everyone's looking at numbers and they see integers, right? They're not drawn by the positive or the negative experience, but they are motivated by something that they created themselves, the potential that could be. They are identified by basically what is needed. They see a need that needs to be met. They're typically creative and solution-oriented, and sometimes they might struggle with what is already set because they want to make something new. They're excited by the new and the different and the challenge. Does anybody see themselves? Maybe a little bit in that, maybe a little bit. All right, I want you to take a moment, we're only going to 2 minutes, with your buddy and just talk about which one of these you identify yourself as and what you can see as the strengths and weaknesses to that characteristic. Ready, go.
It's literally across the street. It's like right
That's exciting. No, yeah, that's not the
Next, I would like you to think about your relationships. You talked about the importance in relationships, your relationships at work, at school, at home, in your community. And I want you just to take a few more minutes to share with your buddy how you think your perspective is a strength and a weaknesses, and a weakness in those relationships. Ready? Go. I want to just take a moment and first thank you for your time and your willingness to be silly and goofy and just have a little bit of fun. Most importantly, I want to thank you for your openness and your willingness to share. At the end of the day, I've said this over and over again, but the hardest part about operating within your emotional intelligence is really being honest with yourself. Understanding who you are, why you believe what you believe, why you think what you think, and the ability to empathize, to set yourself aside and step in the shoes of someone else and to see their perspective. Does anyone have any questions? No? Everybody understood? All right, well, thank you guys for having me.
As you know, we're here till 2:10. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And the reason we ended 10 minutes early is because there's a quick survey. I forgot to mention in the beginning, but I cannot